Welcome back to another episode of Dentistry's Growing with Grace podcast. Join Grace and her guest of the week as they discuss lessons learned in the industry and explore unique insights into ethical growth.
Hello, and welcome back to Dentistry's Growing with Grace. I am so excited to have Dr. Coughlin with me today. Nice to see you, Doctor.
Nice to see you too. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking a little bit about your journey in dentistry and the different experiences that you've had, as well as kind of digging into mindset and how to get your team to have the right mindset and to be on board. And so for anyone joining, you do not want to miss this episode. It's going to be a great one. So tell us a little bit about your background in dentistry and kind of the different environments you've been in.
Yeah, I like to talk about this story because it goes back before, like as I was trying to become a dentist, because I think this is interesting. That has to do with mindset and how you can have different situations really affect your overall outcome. So I want to give you a little history. So I'm Canadian born, and now I'm in Dallas, Texas. I've had a little bit of a journey to get here. And all our fellow dentists, my fellow dentists know that to get into dental school, you have to take DAT. It's like a super stressful test. You try your best, hopefully gonna get the best grade you possibly can. And in Canada, you have to do this part where you're carving out this little bar of soap. It's like this maybe a 5-inch bar of soap, and you have to carve like squares and triangles and all these kind of specific shapes into the bar of soap. And I go through this test, and like everybody who's taking this test, you're studying for a billion hours, it feels like. And you take the test, and this is the first part of the test. I'm nervous. I do it. I get all the numbers of what I think is correct. And then after each portion of that test, you go and you have a little break, and then you go into the next portion. So we do the carving portion, and I get all the values where I think is correct. And then we go outside, we start talking to everybody, and they're like, "Oh, that was tough. That triangle was, like 12 or 16 millimeters by 16 by 16." And I was like, "No, hold up. It wasn't. It was like 17 by 17 by 17. And they're like, no, Nate, like that's not true." And as soon as that happened, I immediately realized, like, oh my gosh, everybody else has it right. I got it wrong. And looking at that one number, I messed up literally one number on this test of my whole like undergrad career, this one number. And that was the difference. So I did well in everything else, got the grades back. I messed up on the carving portion. And in Canadian schools, they're no joke. It's not like you can have an okay grade and get in. Once you mess up on one little thing, you are donezo. So
Wow.
I retake the test. In Canada, same thing. You can't take it that often. So I had to take it 6 months later. I did well in everything, but by this time it's March. And my fellow dentists out there know that most people are in or accepted to school probably in August or September, and they already know what's going on. So I retook it, got my grades back, did everything well. I go back to Canadian schools. I'm like, "Hey, everything's good. All my stuff's good." And they're like, "Yeah, everything's good, but we're not going to accept that second grade until next year." And so, of course, at that point, I was starting to freak out. But then I ended up applying to Boston University and USC in Los Angeles, and got into both. And I just realized that, these things that happen in your life, these things that seemingly are the worst things that could possibly ever happen to you, ended up being the absolute best thing ever for me. That one, literally that 5 seconds of my life switched the trajectory of my life forever. Because instead of staying in Canada, just staying there probably forever, we switched up. I went to LA, and that's where I met my girlfriend, who is now my wife, who is also a dentist, and stayed there and did my orthodontic residency there. And then we moved to Dallas. So having that, that ability to kind of stay calm, realizing that these small glitches that we think are the worst thing for us could actually be some sort of like divine or spiritual, whatever you want to call it, calling for you that can switch your life for the better. So that's like kind of my sorry.
Yeah, it is divine. I think it is divine. And I feel like every time we're in a really hard place, I feel like it's God's way of preparing us for what's next, or pointing us in a certain direction, or helping us learn something that's going to serve us in whatever mission we have to complete next. So I love that you use that word, because that's how I approach it. And I have this mantra in my mind that life is full of blessings and blessings in disguise. So there are the obvious blessings, and then there are the things that are still blessings. They just don't really look like blessings at the time. So
that's so true. Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, tell me a little bit about, okay, you get through dental school. Now you do, you go into ortho. Where do you go from there?
So from there, I realized, so we're in LA and Los Angeles in Southern California. And if anybody is there listening who's in that area, they know how tough it is. You're in Florida. Florida's awesome. I just got back from Florida last like 4 or 5 days ago. Florida's amazing. Texas is amazing. California is also amazing. It's just competitive, tough. So my wife's dad is also a dentist, and he's in California. Basically, he's just like, hey, you need to get out of here. It is really, really tough. Not saying you can't make it, it's just more difficult. So we knew some people in Dallas, came here, started to work for the big corporate offices, which I'm sure a lot of people have worked for before. And you go through it. And I honestly think corporate is good. And this is like kind of controversial because everybody's like, oh, corporate is the worst and all these bad things. But corporate can be good for a couple of reasons, because number one, you start making money right off the bat. And then when you come to school, you are in insane debt. So you need to make funds kind of right off the bat. Secondly, it shows you how to pick up your speed. So in dental school, for me in ortho residency, I've seen, maximum 8 patients a day, which would be like a busy day. You go from that to seeing 80, so your speed you have to pick up your speed just a little bit, but you also want to do good work. And so you realize that, hey, I can't do the majority of the work. I cannot see that many patients. I'm relying on these assistants. You're more training the assistants and having a good relationship with patients in order to kind of survive. Also, there's a reason that corporate is corporate. They have, not all of them, some of them have good systems in place. There's these big corporations that have, 100, 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 offices, and they can't do that many offices if their systems, the processes, and how they implement things don't work. So what I like to do is I worked at those knowing that is not me. Like we can go on our belief structures and all that stuff after this, because I have all these ideas on belief structures, but knowing that wasn't me. So we took all that information and then we opened, my wife and I opened an office, but it was not that simple. So.
Oh, well, no, it was. And then happily ever after, and everything was easy. Hiring was easy. Firing is a breeze. Easiest thing you'll ever do in your career. And the patients, they were just flowing in, right? Like you just build it and they will come, right?
Yeah. We opened the door and there's actually 100 patients standing outside ready to come in. It was crazy.
Yes, with balloons and hot cocoa. And it's so funny. Like on social media, everyone loves, there's this book, Building a Story Brand. And now there's a couple marketing companies that really love this in dentistry because, I'm just going to say this, it's super offensive. And my conscience is like, sugarcoat it. And I'm like, no. Dentists work very hard to get where they are. And I've taught my team this. When you get on the phone, you say doctor. You don't say, hey, Nate, you say Dr. Coughlin, right? I mean, you deserve that title. You work for that title. So when a marketing company comes in and says, we're going to tell your story, the doctor's like, finally, right? Like it gets right to their heart of what they want. And there's something lucrative about that marketing concept of storytelling and marketing. Everything in context, it gets you so far. But on social media, people do this, but they only tell the happy side and they only tell the 100 patients waiting at the door. Well, 50 of them are your cousins. Like, let's really lift the veil here and talk about what it really takes to be successful. And it is not easy or everyone would be doing it. So talk to us a little bit about some of those early, like shocking moments where you were like, oh, I never realized it would be so hard to XYZ.
Oh my God. Okay. We have like so many that it would take like 10 billion hours to fix this up. But let's go let's go through the first one. So we have, like, probably anybody who's opened their own office, if you started from scratch and you did not have any guidance, you don't know anything. Like I remember I remember being like, oh, what's a claim? Like how, and then like, how do you send a claim? So we did this service on this patient. How do we even send a claim? Like, what does a claim look like? Who does it go to? Like, we printed it out. Like, who magically is going to pay us for this claim? But then not only that, we actually had a specialist come in, and he was like, okay, I'm out of network with some insurances, and he's like, so my fee schedule is going to be a little different, and yada yada. And I was like, cool. What's a fee schedule? And meanwhile, we've been open for like a few weeks, and he's like, how do you not know what a fee schedule is? Like, you need to input that in, like, we have open dental. And he's like, you need to input that into open dental so you get the correct fees for all your patients, and different insurances have different fee schedules. I was like, wow, like, we are, no wonder our production looks so crazy, because we're just like putting in random numbers.
I just
So
realized I'm talking over the heads of so many people that are doing startups, because I go in like, and I'm talking about fee schedules and I'm talking about all these things, and they're pretending like they know everything that I'm talking about.
no, it's crazy. It's crazy. Like the amount of things we didn't know. Like looking back, so we have a couple staff members who have been with us since day one, like literally since the time we're open. Now they're regionals for a little bit, and they, yeah, I talk, like, we talked about this often. Like, how the heck did we make it? Like, we literally, and that's the beauty. Like, one of the things, the beauty is with dentistry is that you can, I know you had a doc on this before who was saying the same thing, that you can mess up a ton and still be okay. And then once you finally get it, then you can really rock and roll. But we are like so blessed that dentistry has such a big margin of error that we can do all these messed up things and still be successful. So yeah, we had like just so many things. We were like, I was a terrible boss for a long time, just terrible boss, because I was so worried about every little detail, like, on every single person, not realizing that that's micromanaging, and how bad that is for people, and how bad that is for like people's soul, and like their ability to grow. Luckily I had my wife and some employees who we were friends enough that they could be honest with me and be like, hey, like, this isn't cool how you're managing us. Like, it's too restrictive. Like, you are actually hurting us. The way you're managing is actually hurting the office, and we will grow more if you could just kind of lay it off a bit. And that's so true. Like, there's so many docs who are so, type A, and they want to control everything because that's how we got through school, and that's how we think we can be successful. But in reality, in business, that actually has the opposite effect. Instead of growing, you're constricting people because you are the bottleneck to everything.
So I have a theory on that a little bit. I think that micromanagement is born from inefficient or ineffective accountability. It's kind of like the flip side of accountability. Like, accountability is healthy. You need it. You can't go anywhere without it. If you don't have it, then you're forced to micromanage. And they're very different things. So sometimes when you're actually holding people accountable, they will pull the "you're a micromanager" card, but in reality, you're like, no, I just need these reports. Like, that's not actually micromanagement. And so a lot of, I think, employees like to use that word because they know, as owners, we never want to micromanage. So if they can just throw that out, then you won't hold them accountable. This is my word on, don't mistake accountability with micromanagement, because they're very, very different things.
Absolutely. I think, like, when we'll go into an office, we have multiple now, I'll ask them, like, oh, hey, how is the agent, like, how are we doing with our collections and stuff, right? Just a general question. Almost nobody is like, oh my God, like, we're screwed, we don't know what the hell we're doing. But then you go, okay, cool, that's nice, and let me see the report now. And one of my mentors said this too, and this is kind of like a harsh thing, but it's true. He's like, people lie, numbers don't. So people will tell you, people love to sugarcoat it. They're never going to say, hey boss, like, yeah, we're not doing our job, we're not doing a good thing. But if you look at the numbers, you're like, oh, okay, you guys are doing a great job, everything is going great, you guys are on top of it, I can see you guys are looking at everything. Or we haven't looked at the aging for 4 months. Like, what the heck is going on?
And in marketing, I teach people that numbers do lie. and to be very careful. Yes, be very careful with the numbers. And I don't know if it's appropriate to segue from that into marketing, but it's kind of where my head tends to lend just because of my own passions. But numbers can absolutely lie. So you have to question the source of the numbers and what they actually mean, because they can definitely lie. So I know a lot of doctors say, well, this marketing company promised me 20 patients, but what they actually promised was 20 leads, and they didn't define a lead and what's a qualified versus an unqualified lead, and how do people use numbers to kind of manipulate situations. So I agree. Your numbers aren't going to lie to you. But I'm always teaching people numbers can lie. You have to be aware of this.
Yeah. I get what you mean. I get what you mean, because you're talking about what people are promising you. Kind of what people are going to say. And I'm saying, I'm talking about like specifically the aging and reports. So you're right. I agree. People, and we use various multiple marketing agencies. And some just say they're going to do a lot and don't. And I love talking about marketing. So I love how we're going to segue into this. I have all these like mindset things, and we can talk about that later too. But marketing is amazing. And I love, obviously I have a lot of friends who are in the dental field. Some of them are doing high-end offices. Some of them are doing low-end offices. Some of them are in Beverly Hills in California. Some of them are in like, on the East Coast, all over the place. And it's interesting to see how everybody's marketing is different and perspective is different. But one thing I find is, and you know more about this than me, but I find that majority of dentists shy away from what I find is the easier things, but this may not be the easier things, but like the social medias, the YouTubes, it's funny, one of our biggest, it was for a while, but it's not as anymore. One of our biggest marketing or referrals was Pinterest, which I'm never on Pinterest. So I don't know much about Pinterest, but that was like one of our biggest things. It's like all these things you can do for free. I'm like, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you have this Instagram account, this Facebook account, this YouTube account, and just like give your knowledge out and put all this out there, because potentially you can get these patients from it. So I have like so much passion with that type of stuff, and blogging and getting your SEO proper and doing all these things that you can't see the one-to-one, like as dentists, orthodontists, we study hard, we do well in this test. It's like instant gratification. Whereas if you're, on social and SEO, like SEO takes a long time to get going. So you don't get that instant gratification. So sometimes we're like, oh, we tried it. And I know you said this on the other podcast, which I loved, but you're saying, hey, I tried this one marketing agency or two or three or whatever you tried. And then you're like, I'm not going to do anything. Like marketing doesn't work. Like if marketing doesn't work, why is like Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Apple all over the place? Like obviously marketing works. It's just the approach that you or your team or whoever did not work. So I'm also interested to flip it on you and say, what do you think, like for you and your teams and the people you worked with, what are the best approaches you guys have used to generating leads?
So I will start by saying, and this is a total political answer because I'm totally dodging the question. But it always depends what you're trying to accomplish. And people need to first set up what they're trying to accomplish before they set up the marketing. And so many people, they get into like a marketing planning session with me and they're like, it's just going to be my office manager and she's going to watch your slides or whatever you have. And I'm like, that's not what this is. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And if someone comes to me and says, I want to be the number one doctor in my community, I want everyone to know who I am, and I want to be the top provider of high quality care, and I want my reputation to be this, and I want to attract this many new patients a month that are interested in this, I can reverse engineer that into a marketing plan. And so I would always say, start with what you want and the goal. But if you've given up on marketing and what marketing can do, so you don't even have a goal, then we have a little bit of work to do before we can create that plan. Generally speaking right now I'll actually answer your question. Generally speaking right now, I am a big fan of being found for the people who are looking for you. So SEO, Google Ads is very powerful. And then for branding, I like social media for branding. So that's where you put out video content, where you build your reputation. you've got that three-dimensional connection, just like when you were watching TV 10 years ago and you'd have a commercial interrupt your show, you are not necessarily going to go run to the store and buy a Snickers bar just because you watched a Snickers commercial, but it's making an impression on you and it's building that brand recognition. So my number one goal with every doctor that I speak to is, what's the goal? How are we going to get there? And then here's what you can expect from this. Here's what you can expect from that. And the most frustrating thing in the world for me is when I say, doctor, these are brand build. This particular ad on Facebook is a brand building initiative. Do not call me in 3 months and tell me it didn't get you a new patient. I don't run it if that's your expectation for this particular thing, because they're not going to call you and say that they saw your ads. When they're ready, they're going to look you up on Google and they're going to say Google was the source. But you're going to see those numbers go up, but you're not going to see the direct call to action from this branding initiative. And they say, okay. And then they call me 3 months later and I'm like, we talked about this.
It's so funny because that was honestly my perception early on. I was just like, with Google, it's easier. I'm not saying it's 100%, but Google, they're searching, they go, dentist near me. Oh, my ad pops up. They'll click on that. We have a landing page and so we can track it and all that good stuff. Which is still not 100% because people will potentially click on that ad, see us like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to take Billy to school now. And then, they're going to come back and go look in your potentially like a Google Maps page and all these different things to get to you. So you go, oh my gosh, that Google ad didn't work. But it's like, it actually did. It was the last thing that pushed them. Or that Facebook ad. I think it's super rare. And I'm like an Instagram shopper, which is that like Instagram has their marketing down to T for me. Cause I'm just like scrolling through my feed. I'm like, that looks cool. I'm like, oh, but I still will never buy directly from that. I will see that, I will bookmark it. And then I will go to their website on desktop because I like to look on desktop and buy from there. So if they had their marketing, they'd probably see it like, oh, potentially Nathan did not buy from this ad, but I actually did, And so it's tough to see that. Even yesterday, we're looking at some of our Facebook ads and I was like, oh, we're not getting many referrals from it. But then I look at the ad itself. I'm like, oh, we had, like 500 clicks from it. So I'm like, oh, people are like definitely looking at it, but you just don't get that. You don't get that excitement or that gratitude knowing like, oh, it's a one-for-one thing. Like that just doesn't exist.
And dentists think like that, like vast majority think like that. So this is very hard for them. And here's the thing, you're not selling $15 magnetic eyelashes. This isn't an impulse buy. This is a healthcare provider. So you have to build the brand first, build that trust, that credibility, and think about the length of the sales cycle that it could take. This is a bigger purchase, especially if you're selling, I'll say selling because I'm not afraid to say it, but offering orthodontics or implant dentistry or more costly procedures, sometimes elective dentistry, cosmetics, you're going to have to build that reputation, and it comes over time. And this is not an excuse. There are a lot of marketing initiatives that we run that are that direct click to call. Right. I mean, the numbers should start to improve. If you're running Google ads, they should start to improve in 2 to 3 months. You should start to feel the impact. Branding, you're going to gradually see it over time. And then SEO, I say usually 6 months, depending on your situation. But there are tangible things to track here. But
yeah. And I don't, you're right. And I don't want to say like, hey, it's just, we're throwing the money away and just praying, oh, marketing is going to work. Definitely you're still looking at the numbers. You're still looking at like click-through rates, how many clicks you're getting, how many directly you're getting from maybe landing pages. And I love how you say you're not afraid to sell, because it's just so interesting. Like, why is selling is not a bad thing, but yet dentists are like, I don't want to sell treatments. We had a newer dentist come on maybe 6 months ago, and he's like, oh, I don't want to sound like I'm too selly. I was like, selly? I'm like, the patient had a bombed out tooth, right? And he's like, oh, I want to potentially, I'm going to do something else initially, and because I don't want to bombard them. And I was just like, well, keep in mind, like, you're not selling, like I don't know, something really negative, like guns, or I don't know, whatever, something really, really terrible, right? You're selling health. Like that is what you're selling. You're trying to promote health in this person. Like how beautiful is that? We're literally helping these people. So to say it's like, oh, selling is something negative, I'm like, that's kind of crazy. Also, we're selling ourselves every single day, like every minute, we're selling ourselves to our spouses, to our kids, to our staff, to the patients coming in, selling ourselves that we're like these great people and you want to work with us. So
Well,
selling is just that is decide.
And that's where I would flip it and say, well, define selling for me. I would just say, what does selling mean to you?
Yeah.
Because to me, it means that you're offering something to someone that they need. And if you're ethical about what you're recommending and you explain why you're recommending it, is it really a problem? And what happens, and this is what I used to say to my dental team. So I worked in a practice before I started the agency. And I used to try to get everyone to be salespeople in that practice. So I used to say, whenever they would cringe, I'm not selling, I don't sell. I would say, what happens if that patient leaves today and they don't accept your treatment plan? What happens? And then they would say, oh, well, they go somewhere else, or, they come back when they're ready, or they, and I was like, no, you don't know what happens. So they came here for a reason. They were ready to get healthy. They're ready to invest in their health. And I'm not saying you push them. If they truly can't afford it, help them with what you can, you're here to serve. But most of the time, it's about priorities. It's about what do they value. And it's fun. It's fun to help people. Like, it shouldn't be something we're worried about. And I know we only have a couple minutes, but I did want to get to the point of mindset. And I think this is a perfect segue for mindset, because when you're talking and you're worried about selling to a patient, do you really have the right mindset? What are kind of your thoughts on mindset and its role in a successful dental team?
So that, like, unfortunately, we won't be able to cover this in like the few minutes we have left. But
you can't cover this big topic in 2 minutes.
I'll give you my tamed down version. I just had the pleasure to interact with Ian Pruckner, who's this guy who very successful. He does he's kind of like in real estate, and he gave his example, which I love. So I follow Tony Robbins and all these different. I'm big on like constantly and never ending improvement and just trying to get better as much as we can. But his is really interesting. His acronym was TBAR. And I remember this so well because it just really stuck home with me. And it is thoughts, beliefs, actions, results. So a lot of the times I'll give example of, going to work out. I'd like to be healthy. So you have people who will come in and they say, maybe they have these health goals. So they say, hey, I want to lose 30 pounds just because that's something I want to do. And the problem is you're focusing on these results, but you're not changing your thoughts and beliefs. And this is very important. And that's why I have these people who do these yo-yo diets or who can't stay at the gym or can't stay active, is because you don't physically, or your thoughts and beliefs aren't aligned with what you're trying to do. So if instead of that, you say, I know I'm a healthy person, I'm an active person, I'm going to go to the gym every day, that is just who I am. These thoughts, if you constantly put this in your head, will change your belief structure, because now you say, oh, I'm a healthy person. It's not like, oh, I need to lose 30 pounds. It's like, I'm healthy and that is it, which will lead to these actions, which is working out, which then gets you the results. And that's how I think it's like, that is like the crucial thing. It's not necessarily just focusing on these results, focusing on these patients, focusing on losing 30 pounds. It's getting your thoughts and belief structures in place, because there's going to be so many ups and downs. It's like crazy. And if your thoughts and beliefs aren't sound, then you're done for. Like you won't be able to get the results that you're after.
So just to recap that, it is the self-limiting beliefs come from our self-view and how we think about ourselves. So if we think we're someone who struggles in business, or I'm a dentist and so I'm not very good at business, if we continue to tell ourselves and accept that, then our actions will fulfill that belief about ourselves. So we have to change with positive affirmations, very intentionally change how we view ourselves, and then the actions will more naturally follow our beliefs about ourselves. Is that a good recap?
That is exactly right. Yeah, and it goes with marketing too. Like you said, you had some doctors friends who are doing that, where they'd say, "Oh, I've tried a couple people for marketing and it doesn't work," because their belief structures and it's telling them that marketing it may or may not work. I don't know, but if a dentist was like, "Marketing works," everything, like all my like I know marketing works. I see blah 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 doing these marketing and it works. It doesn't matter how many marketing agencies you use. You're just going to keep doing it until it works.
Until it works.
Like that's the thing. That's the answer.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, Dr. Coughlin, this has definitely been one of my favorite interviews. Thank you so much for spending some time with me this morning and for this awesome positive energy that you've just infused on all of us. I really appreciate it. For those of you watching or listening, join our Facebook group, Dentistry is Growing with Grace. I share a ton of information, and it's just a good place to ask your marketing questions. If you're looking for a marketing agency that's effective and ethical, look us up, identitydental.com, and I hope you all have a great day.